At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Rapid Deploy is the CAD of the future. It's cloud-aided dispatch, not dinosaur computer-aided dispatch that looks like it was built in the 1980s. Rapid Deploy's cloud-native CAD, mapping, and analytics increase situational awareness for call takers, dispatchers, and responders. Rapid Deploy is taking public safety by storm. It's fast and easy to deploy, with implementation in days, not years. It's affordable for all agencies of all sizes. Rich in features, functionality, and data, it's also reliable and secure as we use Microsoft Azure Government Cloud. Go to rapiddeploy.com to learn more.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 393 of Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy, and it's July 6th, 2021. Just a couple days after 4th of July, and man, I hope you all had a great holiday weekend. I know I did. I had some friends come over, friends that I haven't seen in a while, and of course my family is here as well. My mom is still out here for a few more days, so we had a lot of fun. We were doing up some fireworks, doing it safely. However, there's always something that happens, right? Sometimes there's stuff that you can't predict. And I'm going to mention that here in just one moment. But I want to thank patrons, of course, for everything. New patrons that have just jumped on as well. New content is coming. Audio versions of the Dispatchers Roundtable has already been going up for patrons only, another exclusive perk. And then open mic as well is going to be going on there. And then Singing Badly in My Car. That is another bonus series that's there for patrons. So make sure to check that out. You can go to patreon.com/WTT podcast. So a lot coming up. We've got the Navigator Conference. Navigator is going to be from July 13th through the 15th. And Navigator has a lot going on. The IAAD is also hosting the podcast once again at the conference. And we are very excited to be there again. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be there to highlight everything that you all are doing, but as well for the attendees to come up and share their 911 stories. I will also be doing Imagine Listening. I'll be doing that on July 13th at 8 a.m. That's right, 8 a.m. I know it's a little early to be telling emotionally intense I Am 911 stories, but just remember that the last half of it is open mic live, and that's where we will be sharing all of the funny ass stories, all the funny shit that happens when people call in. And it's not about, it's not the caller, it's the situation, it's the incident. It's some of those incidents that happen where it just makes you think, is this real life? And it does happen. It happens. So that's how Imagine Listening is going to go. And then on July 15th, we'll be doing Imagine Listening again, an encore session. I believe that one is around 11:30 or so. Also, this is all Pacific time, as this is going to be in Vegas. You can also check us out at booth 412, and that's where we're going to be recording all the episodes. Navigator has their closing speaker, who will be Marley Matlin, and she's got an excellent session that she's going to be doing there. Also, make sure to check out, you can go to, I believe, in the App Store, really, and you can find this app that she has that teaches basics of sign language. So make sure to check all of that out. If you are on the fence of going to Navigator, it is an excellent time. The networking alone is amazing. But of course, all of the amazing speakers and the continuing education you'll be able to find there. So you can check that out, and that'll be navigator.emergencydispatch.org. Thank you once again to the IAD and Navigator for hosting us. It is going to be excellent. So my guest today, I'm excited to have on, we've been sending a few emails back and forth, and I listened to one of her episodes recently, and it was awesome. The conversation and the stories, I mean, everything was raw and just very powerful. So I'm excited to have her on. Her name is Christy Warren. She's a retired firefighter and also the creator and host of the Firefighter Deconstructed Podcast. Hello.
Hello, Ricardo.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. Your whole setup is very impressive.
Oh, I appreciate it. This is going to be good. I listened to the episode. I was going to try to get in a couple of them, and things have been crazy, but I got the one in, and I was sitting here working on a few things, and it got to the point where whatever it was that I was working on at the time, I couldn't work on it anymore because I was just listening to the stories that were being shared, and I thought, this is going to be good. I'm looking forward to having her
awesome.
On. So
awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So as I was talking a little bit ago about the 4th of July, one of the things I wanted to mention is, and because of the fact that you're retired firefighter
yes.
as well, so we've got a pretty nice backyard, and we had everything set up. We had these pallets, and we had some of the the mortar. Oh geez,
like wood pallets you had.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that we use to start fires. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So we use for training fires.
That's what we had, or those pallets, and we had them screwed down and everything. But this one specifically that went off, we had it in this metal tube that was in the ground. Like we wet it all around the ground just in case anything happened. The crazy thing though is that it didn't shoot up the way it was supposed to. Now, this wasn't a one of the big shells or anything. It was a smaller one. It was only about this big, but still, shot up in the air enough that it explodes and there's color and stuff. Well, the thing didn't go all the way. It never flew. It just got stuck. It wasn't in the ground. It just never. I don't know what happened. It never flew, and everyone took cover, and it just right there. There was no embers, nothing crazy, but oh man. That was some scary shit.
Was there shrapnel?
Well, I mean, we looked around and stuff. And I mean, I'm sure there was something somewhere. There was nothing burning or nothing like that. But yeah, it was kind of crazy. It was the first time that anything like that has ever happened.
There's always a first.
I know,
That's
right?
Funny when you're talking about like, oh, we did fireworks. I was like, oh no.
Yes, yeah. And most of them were, like the fountains. Most of them were just fountains, and we had sparklers rather. And there were some other sparklers that were like swords, so you could hold on to them, and they would, shoot out a bunch of different things. But man, that one freaked me out. Like after that, I stood there, and my brother and a friend of mine that was visiting. He goes, "Come on, man, let's do the others." It's like, I don't know if I want to do the others. Like this, like I've taken enough phone calls of shit that has happened and stuff that is caught on fire that I don't know that I even want to do anymore. Is it? Let's go with the little ones. Okay, I have a box, literally a box left over of some of those other ones that go.
Really?
Up. Yeah, we didn't even use all of them. So I'm gonna find some people who want them or something. But man,
you can bring them by a fire station, and they'll be glad to take them off your hands. People
really?
do that. Well, that's what people are told. Like, if you have any illegal fireworks, bring them by the fire station and we'll dispose of them properly. And we just took them home and lit all that stuff off at home.
Oh, well, there you go.
Police never got them. They never made it to the hazmat locker. We're like, thank you. This is pretty awesome.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So in the state of Indiana, those type of fireworks, all of that is legal in this state. Yeah, it's all legal in this state. And but when I lived in Michigan, they were not. So there would be a lot of people who would call in and kind of, snitch on their neighbors and say, they've got these mortars, they're going up. They're not supposed to go in the air and shoot. And sometimes it would turn out there were just like bottle rockets and, just the little small ones that make noise and pop. It was just neighbors that were pissed off at others and just trying to get people in trouble.
Yeah, even the little tiny things aren't legal out here. I think everybody's so afraid of fires that people are pretty tight. Even though the things this 4th of July, they went off until about 1:00 in the morning. People were setting stuff off. Do you remember those little black snakes though, like that little black pellet, and you'd light it?
Yes,
and it would just go. It was like,
right.
What's the point of that?
Yeah. I remember showing my kids that, and they would be watching and we'd be right out in the cement driveway and light them off, and like, oh, that's kind of cool. But then after a few seconds, they're like, what else does it do?
Exactly.
Oh, this is it. This is all it does. Oh.
I know.
Yeah. They were expecting some smoke or some colors or some popping. It's like, no, it's just they're snakes. Well, they're not really snakes. Like, no. I know, but then you get into the trying to explain. It's like, you know what? We'll just forget it. We'll just we're done.
We won't buy these next year.
Yeah, they had more fun with just those little snaps, the ones that you just throw down and they pop.
Yeah, those are kind of fun.
Yeah, they were enjoying those more than anything else. Like, well, we should have just done that, because the addition that we live in, there were so many surrounding additions that were doing their own fireworks show, like almost a professional type fireworks show, that we could have just sat out front of the house and watched all around. Yeah, everything that was going on. By the time that my brother and friend and I were lighting off the other ones, like, just turn around and watch those. Oh man.
Oh, that's awesome.
So how was your holiday?
Oh, my holiday was pretty quiet. I've been I'm training for a triathlon, and so I had a really hard training weekend. So yeah, the 4th of July, I had some friends and family that were having a barbecue, and then go watch the fireworks, and I pretty much slept on the couch all day. So it was pretty quiet. Very chill.
Nice. Sometimes that's what it's all about as well. You can just chill and hang out and relax.
That's all I had in me.
Well, especially if you're training. I can't even imagine the amount of training that you have to do for triathlon, but I'm guessing it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's not the race, it's the training that's a pain in the ass. Like the race is great and fun, but the training is it becomes like your full job almost. Like you're not your full-time job, but it comes first, and there's a lot of stuff you just can't go do because, like, 4th of July, it's just trash. So yeah, it's a lot. It's fun. I like it. I'm excited.
Excellent. I know a few field responders that wouldn't do triathlons, or what is the other one? Like the Spartan races and a bunch of other those. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you're a retired firefighter. So how did you get into public safety and everything to begin with? Do you come from a family of public safety, or just kind of jumped into it?
Well, actually, so I went to school. I went to UC Davis right out of high school. And I wanted to be a doctor. And then I was kind of, I mean, the first part of pre-med is boring as hell. It's just lots of chemistry and math and all that crap. So I took an EMT class thinking that would be really fun. And I was a big fan of Johnny and Roy back in the 70s. So I took this EMT class, and I was looking for something to do that summer. And so I was like, well, screw it. I got a job on an ambulance in Vallejo. And after that, I fell in love with it. It was just the greatest thing ever. I was pretty good at it. And I did that for about a year, and it was nice because it was a single medic system. So being an EMT on an ALS ambulance, I I learned a lot. So then I went to paramedic school and came back and kept working as a medic in Vallejo. It was pretty gnarly there. So, I mean, I loved it. I had a great time. And then, I was looking for longevity and just always watching what the fire department did. And I was like, that looks like so much fun. And so, I started testing, and I first got hired by a small department out here called Moraga Orinda Fire. And then I went to Berkeley Fire, I think Berkeley, California. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. So that's where I, spent most of my career as a firefighter medic, and then as a driver, and then as a captain. I retired as a captain. So yeah, I just loved it. I couldn't think of anything else that I could do. It was just like it's like the perfect job for me. I could wear T-shirts and take naps, and I'm horrible at getting anything like done or finished, but man, you say you need to go right now, and I'm on it, and I loved it. Yeah, I can't think of anything else in the world I'd rather do.
What was it that you think, that it really got into your blood there? Because you talk about doing pre-med and everything, and then you jump into being EMT, and do you remember, like, was there one point where you thought, oh man, this is what it's all about? Was it racing to a call, or working on somebody, or was there anything that you can think of that really solidified, like, I think I really want to do this instead of what I originally wanted to do?
I don't know if it was one thing that solidified it. It was, it was an incredible challenge. When I was pre-med, we spent some time, I joined this little pre-med group, and we'd go to the hospital and follow a doctor around, and it was pretty boring. Like, I can't even believe how boring it was. It was just like, okay, yeah, that guy's belly's big, I don't care. Or, you know what I mean? It was just like, let's talk about all these different lab results and, whatever. And, I always play sports, about athletic. And so I like, the physical aspect of the job. And then man, when I'm on a call, especially a critical call, it's just like the whole rest of the world just falls away. And, all you do is just, you're so focused, and, people talk about being in flow or being in the zone. And, when I was on a critical call, that's where I went, and it just felt amazing to be there. It was just incredible. I couldn't get enough of it. And, I loved working in Vallejo. We were it's like if you took the whole city of Oakland and just compressed it into a small ball, that was Vallejo. And it was, we had the highest homicide rate in the nation one year. And,
oh man.
And it was only a city of like 100,000 people. It was crazy. There was no such thing as ride-along syndrome in Vallejo. People would pull up like, hi, I'm like, get in, we're going to a shooting. And I just loved it. I loved being in that moment, and almost having the rest of the world fall away. It was just, it was incredible.
I can definitely relate with you there, because when I was in dispatch, I would rather be taking a more of a high priority call versus a phone call that had to do with someone's dog that's barking, or fireworks. Oh, yeah. A fireworks call. When someone is just calling to complain about somebody, and then you ask them, okay, well, do you want contact? And they say no. Can I just remain anonymous? And we had already been told by the sergeants, if people don't want contact, then we're not going to do anything. Because we know what's going on right now, unless there's something like really, really, pertinent that's going on, then we're going to go out there. But I get that. I get that, because there's so much that's going on. And like you said, you're focused. And so I've always explained taking a 911 phone call like getting into a fast car, slamming the gas and letting go of the steering wheel, because it gets that crazy. But on the other side of that, even though it's that crazy, you're also fully wired in, and there's so much that's going on there where you're talking to this caller and the worst shit moment that they're having, and you're trying to help them. We might, like, for me specifically too, I'm freaking out in the back of my head with this person because I'm right there with them, but my voice and everything, you would never know. Because I gotta be focused, I gotta be calm, and I have to be wired in just like that. That's how it got into my blood as well. A lot of people say, you guys are adrenaline junkies. We're like, well, I don't know, maybe.
I think we are a little. Yeah, I would say so. Totally. There's nothing else you can do to replace that. I remember I say this all the time, but I went ziplining, a couple of years ago after I was retired, and everybody's like, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "This is the most boring fucking thing I've ever done in my life." Like this is, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's pretty and I can see the view, but there's no, I don't know. There's nothing, there's no adrenaline. There's just nothing there,
Has it been hard being retired with that adrenaline piece? Or are you able to supplement it though with like the triathlon and stuff?
No, it's pretty tough trying to find that, to find, it's just like I said, it's just like that being in that zone and nothing else matters, and you can't hear anything else and you can't see anything else. And there's nothing, no matter what's going on at home or in life, or all that you can concentrate on is what is right in front of you. And it's been really, really hard not being able to replace that. It's almost like I try to. I mean, the triathlon helps a little bit, when you get really tired. It's like you turn the corner thinking this hill on your bike is going to end, and it still hasn't ended. But I did the Escape from Alcatraz swim, and I was hoping that would, kind of scare the crap out of me. And I just really enjoyed it. It didn't scare me at all. But yeah, it's really hard. I really miss, being in that zone and trying to find something else that will give me that same feeling.
I think for me, what was kind of I wouldn't say it was fully an easy transition, but when I left dispatch and went into becoming an industry partner, the private sector of 911, I was going around and training dispatchers on a few different things, whether it be call handling or text to 911. And I think that's one of the things that helped me was I was able to sit in dispatch and listen to everything that was going on. So I kind of got that fix, and that, you get that moment in your chest where you're like, right, you're getting that adrenaline coming in, kind of pumped up. But there was also a few times where I would hear the phone ringing like 2 or 3 times, and I would want to get up and go and answer.
Oh, totally.
Like, can I help you guys out? And they would say, well, you don't know our system. Like, well, I kind of do. But so that kind of helped out. I haven't done any of that training stuff in a while, but I think, going to conferences and talking to people more so now, now that, not last year it sucked, but more so now as more in-person stuff is starting to come up again. That stuff is helping as well, but also what we're doing here, having these conversations and talking and kind of feeding off each other and stories and such, I think helps as well. Now, for you, so I want to go back really quick to when you first made your switch over to, becoming an EMT and all. What was that like for you in the beginning? Was there anything that surprised you, or was it really kind of how you thought it was going to be?
The only thing that surprised me was the things actually that people called 911 for, like. I'm like, wow, like I didn't even know that was allowed. Like you sprained your finger. Like I honestly didn't know that was allowed. Like, I mean, all the bullshit that we, get called out for. And, and I get it. It's everybody's emergency. Everybody has their own level of, what's their emergency is. But yeah, I would think that's actually the biggest surprise I had was the amount of like non-emergency things that people would call 911 for. I mean, other than that, I guess the other thing that I wasn't expecting is that all the entities involved in providing pre-hospital care, the patient didn't always come first. It came down to money, and other things like that.
Yeah, there's so many different things and different professions that some of them, when these issues come up, or not so much issues, but different situations and how they run things, you just start to find out more and more what it is, how things are working in the back end, and they're surprising, right? There's a lot of them that are surprising. and there are ones that you also think, oh, that's why they don't talk about that, or that's why people don't know, because that's what's going on the back end.
Right.
And for myself, I'll leave it at that too. But yeah, there's always something else. But so when you made your switch from paramedic to going fire medic as well, but then going on to be a firefighter, what was that training like? Was there a big difference? I mean, of course, there's probably a good part of it that was different, but I guess the same thing with that one. Was there anything that surprised you or caught you off guard or anything, making that switch from medic to fire medic and then just straight up firefighter? I'm assuming you were doing both as well.
Correct. When I started, I was doing both. Then at Berkeley, we transported. We had our own ambulances. No, nothing really shocked me too much. For some reason, fire departments can kind of get away with more. It seems like the private ambulance companies have to very strictly follow the rules, and the fire service kind of says, well, yeah, that's nice, but we're going to do what we want. So there really wasn't much of a difference. I didn't really find anything. I mean, it was harder because you had to, get in your EMS training and you had to get in your fire training. And the way Berkeley did it, we only had 3 ambulances for, 140 something thousand people. And so our ambulances are constantly running. So when you're on the ambulance all the time, it was really hard to get in on fire training, because then you go to a fire and you're expected to be well-versed in the stuff that you never made training for. So that was, a little bit difficult, but no, there wasn't really anything that surprised me.
Did you ever find yourself struggling at all with like certain protocols on how you did something on the ambulance versus how you were going to be doing something as a firefighter? And I ask because we had a few people who would come in to dispatch. One specifically, he was straight EMS and like fire rescue. And then he applied to be in dispatch. He was in dispatch. And he would be doing a medical and he would say, well, this is how we do it out on the road. And I'd have to tell him, this isn't the road, man. Like this, it's different in here. The protocol is different. You can't do it the same. Did you ever run into any issues like that?
No, not really. I mean, because like you say, protocols are protocols. And, you used to, when you start off as a medic, you're used to following protocols. You just, every county has a different set. So you just need to learn what there are. I mean, the big difference too between when I worked on the ambulance in Vallejo is we were a single medic, and then when I went to the fire side, we were 2 medics. So, so it was nice. You either had somebody to argue with, or somebody to bounce stuff off with, and
right,
and kind of and help you out. And so that was really nice to have more hands on deck helping out than just yourself. But no, it was really similar. It was really the same.
So what type of training did you actually have to do or go through, for firefighting? Now, I only know of stuff that I've seen, on TV or from talking to a couple friends. Yeah, exactly. But from talking to a few friends and, how they would have to go and, run through, with all, the smoke and their gear and all this other stuff. But I've never really found out specifically the types of trainings and what they would have to do. Would you be able to shed some light on that a little?
Well, sure. Yeah. So, first you go through the academy and, every time, it's kind of like dispatch. Everybody, you do the same thing. You answer the phone and you dispatch calls, but everybody does it a little bit differently. They push different buttons. They're different. You have to learn the basic things like hose loads, how to pull the hose out, how to put the hose back in. You learn all kinds of stuff about, fire behavior. You have to learn about construction. Goodness gracious. Rope systems, it's like we're becoming like the jack of all trades and the master of none. You have to learn all kinds of, tools like, the jaws of life, the Hirsch tool, all the extrication tools. And those will change a few times. There's airbag systems. There's all kinds of systems used for, extricating people from cars and securing cars and ladders. You got to learn, every department throws their ladder. When we say throw, it means put up a ladder. Mm-hmm. Every department throws their ladder a little bit differently. And like every department has a different hose load. And so, if you go from department to department, you have to, learn all that stuff over again. And, there's a lot of book stuff to learn. And, and then you have to go out and practice it and be able to be extremely efficient at it without, being able to do it at 2:00 in the morning when you've woken up from a deep sleep.
Right. Yeah.
That's always fun. Yeah. It was a great battalion chief said that, they should, when they give captain's tests, they should give one at like 2 a.m. where you have to, do this fire problem when you just woke up, because we had this huge fire, like literally around the corner from my station. And, we were there in probably 60 seconds from the time we got dispatched till, we pull up on this huge fire, and it's like, still like trying to figure out who I am and where I am. And
Right.
I can't open his eyes, all crusted with sleep. And so, so I'm not exactly sure if that's what you're looking for, but that's all the fire stuff. There's so much more. It goes on forever. And then, being an EMS department, you got to learn all the EMS protocols and, kind of like how they do things. And, every hospital is a little bit different. And yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, definitely sounds like there's a lot of stuff that you have to do, especially as you were saying, having to wake up at about 2 a.m. when a call comes in. I worked midnights my whole dispatch career, except for one like 3 or 4 month stint where I'd been promoted to supervisor, and nobody wanted that morning shift for whatever reason. So of course it fell on me because I'm the low person on the pole. So that kind of sucked because I was always a midnight person. But I always thought about that, having a call come in at 2 or 3 in the morning and then toning it out, just kind of thinking in my head, so I've been here awake this whole time. They're, asleep, or at least trying to sleep, right? And now I'm going to wake their asses up to send them to a call. I wonder what that's like, having to get up out of nowhere, being scared, from the tones and stuff, and then quickly getting everything on and hauling ass going over there. And like you're saying, trying to, where am I? How that's working out. What do you remember? So hold on a minute. Just let me say this part first. In the academy, did they do a lot of, training like that as well in the middle of the night, where they, you'd wake up and go do different calls, or it was just more like kind of the basics for science of fire?
Yeah, it's mostly the basics. But you would have to learn it, like, you have to practice stuff, ad nauseum. So you could do it at 2:00 in the morning when you're sound asleep, so it became second nature.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when you were brand new, it's hard because, your brain's going a million miles a minute of just being overwhelmed about to go in this house on fire. And do I remember, there's so much shit you have to carry, like you have to have an axe and a rope and a flashlight and your radio and all that kind of stuff. And so it's a lot. It's a lot for a new person, but they don't do anything like that. They just make sure that, you're always with a captain or a lieutenant, you're always with an officer who will kind of make sure that you're safe and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And, the other thing is you have to memorize where everything is on the truck, on the engine, on the ambulance. And there's a lot of stuff on there, but yeah, so you can just go right to it and not, like, hold on, I'll find it. You don't want to be doing any of that. Like, hang in there.
I don't have time for you to go and find it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
But so do you remember then what it was like when you're ready in and I guess you're on your first day of going out, not so much fighting it, but like you said, being with, an officer or something, so that you are seeing everything, observing, and just kind of learning as you're going along. But do you remember that first one? Like, do you remember being nervous at all, or was it more like, hell yeah, we're about to do this shit?
I'd say in the very, very beginning, there was definitely a lot of, hell yeah, we're about to do this shit. And then there was some nervousness of like doing it right, like remembering where, like all of a sudden, like my very, very first fire as a firefighter at Moraga Rinda, they changed it all up. Like, you learn all the stuff in the academy, and then there's also, then there's how we do it in the real world. And that's always kind of driven me crazy. I wish we would train for the real world. And So you learn all this stuff in the academy. This is how we do it in the academy. And then you go to this fire and everything I'd say when you're new, everything moves so much faster than you expect it to, because it's so hard to recreate that on the training ground of how fast things move. And, even with the seasoned people, it's like, there's no urgency to kind of get that speed moving. And that was the hardest part. It's like, it wasn't being nervous. It was trying to keep up. Like by the time you got a tool, like you get the saw out and the chainsaw, and you go through pushing all the, pulling the choke and doing all the things you need to do to start the chainsaw. And when it's like your first time doing that on the drill ground, by the time that you figured it out and you got the pull cord in your hand, somebody else has already had the saw started and they're already on their way up to the roof. Because they've done it, you know what I mean? It's like they've done it a million times. They've had to do it at the speed under these conditions. And they don't even think about how to start a saw anymore, where you're still having to go through the motions, and stuff like that. They teach you a way to pull when you have to pull a lot of hose off, to pull it off neatly so you can take it where you want to go a lot quicker, neatly. And the first fire I went to, I'm just throwing hose like, oh my God. And then I looked down, I was like, fuck, that's why they taught us to do it all, like neat and careful, because it was just a big giant spaghetti knot. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, the other guy who's got his hose, who's been doing it forever, is already gone with his hose. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest part of it, is just how, and I'm sure you experience that in dispatch too. You know what I mean? You have a call answered and stuff entered in before the new person even is like, wait, what button do I push again?
Right. Yeah. And it was like that, the first time walking in and me seeing everyone at their consoles, passing by someone who is not only on the phone, but also typing at the same time into a complaint and answering the radio, whether it be fire, EMS, all at the same time, and eating.
Right.
And I'm thinking, how the hell are you, or even how the hell am I going to do this? I don't know if this is something that I'm actually going to be able to do, but it was just one more thing. It was just, just like you're saying, you get in there and you just start learning and you start doing, but also at the same time, trying not to, get into your own head of trying to either be perfect or trying to keep up, because you got to learn those little things, and then you find out some other shortcuts that will also help. But when you get too much into your head, that's when you start messing up, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's part is like, when you're new, you're still thinking a lot, and then when by the time you've been doing it forever, you don't really think anymore. You just react, and that's when you get in trouble, I think. Like you say, when you sit and think, I think you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
What was that moment like for you when you went from trying to figure out the chainsaw to just being able to do it, muscle memory? Do you remember that moment, or any, not just that part, but anything that you were working on? Like for me, working on a bunch of stuff and finally getting that pace in there, and after a call, thinking, hell yeah, I just rocked that shit. Like I'm in. Like I've hit that point now.
Yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. I don't really remember a moment. I remember being an EMT, and like, it's all the stuff that's not in the book, that really throws you off. And, I remember going on a car wreck and being like they didn't teach us what to do with this. Like, I don't know how to get this, and I don't know how to deal with this lady. And, I think when you stop, when you're able to, I don't know what the word is, but when you're able to kind of like come up with something, quickly, and it's kind of like when it happens, there's a word in there I'm trying to think. I don't really remember a moment. I remember, and I'm not tooting my own horn, because there's nothing, I suck at everything else in the world. And this is like the only thing that I was good at. And I think it just came really natural to me. I think it just, it was something that I did well, and I didn't, I don't really remember. I don't remember that moment. I remember driving the first time I drove Code 3 in an ambulance. I almost probably killed several people. Because Because it was like, the old ambulance days, I didn't give you any driver's training, and I pretty much just put my foot on the floor and drove as fast as I could to, it was like, I'm sure it was like abdominal pain or, something not really super important, or I should say code 3-ish. But yeah, I remember that just being like out of my mind excited. And I don't know, I think I'm just rambling on now, but I don't know. It came really natural to me. And like I said, which is great for the job, but I have no other life skills.
I think it's good when you get in there and you have those moments. I mean, originally, you wanted to help people off, from the beginning. And you continued on in a different direction, but still, doing it, medically, but then also, doing it with, becoming a firefighter and all. And you combine all of this, and you're really doing something for the community. That part that you were feeling where you wanted to help. You're also getting that adrenaline rush in there as well that you dig so much, but also at the same time too, you're building also this, this camaraderie with everyone that you work with, this family that you end up having. And it helps in a sense too, because when you need help, when we need help as field responders and 911, first responders all together, they're the ones that, are the ones who understand us and end up helping us out as well.
Yeah. I kind of had a little bit of a different take. I mean, I think so many of us get into the profession because we do want to help people. I also really think we get into the profession because it fills a hole for us. We need the job as much as the job needs us, if not more. And like an example is, there's a good fire going, right? Everybody wants to go to the fire because the fire is, exciting and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's fun. And then there's a little lady who's fallen and twisted her ankle, and nobody wants to go to that call. Everybody's going to fight over going to the fire. And so it's almost like so which one are you actually be helping somebody more? You're actually going to be helping the little lady who has, a twisted ankle more, because the fire, I mean, almost every house fire that we've been to, they end up tearing the house down. You know what I mean? It's you could save some people's belongings sometimes. And, you say, okay, well, why are you rushing to the fire so fast? It's like, well, in case somebody's trapped and hurt. It's like, okay, well, we have a call over here where somebody actually is hurt, but nobody wants to go to that call. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so the helping part is there, and especially when I think when it really comes to play is when we can't help somebody, and that's what's just devastating to us. But I really think so many of us get into the job, for that adrenaline rush and for that that camaraderie and being needed, and I think it's something that we're good at. One thing, a lot of research is showing that people who get into first response had crappy childhoods, grew up in alcoholic homes or some kind of abuse, like police officers. 30% of all male police officers have been molested, and those are just the people who reported it or said to it. And so it's like we're good at it. We grew up in chaos, and so we're really, really good at it. And then like you say, that family, you have a family, even if you don't get along with some people, on your shift or in your station, it's like you always know that you have that place to go back to. And police officer dispatch, they're always looking for overtime. They're always looking to fill shifts. And it's like things are shitty at home or things are shitty wherever the rest of your life. You go to work. You know what I mean? And you're needed there. And what greater way to try and fill that hole about being needed or cared about or useful or purposeful, than to go do a job like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so devastating for so many of us to retire, because here we were once, we were something and something important, and did something that we're good at, and then part of a family. And then it's just so amazing the day before you retire, what you are, and then the day after you retire. it just completely, it removes you from that loop. And I mean, there's still the camaraderie, and I still talk to the guys all the time, but it's just still, trying to fill that hole and having something missing. I don't know if that makes any sense, or if I sound like an asshole, but
no, for real. It definitely does. I think that's why a lot of us, when we do retire out of whatever, discipline of public safety it is, we still continue to stay in public safety one way or another. For me, it was going into being an industry partner, but I had started doing what I was doing while I was in dispatch. It was hard to leave because I felt like there was still a lot more that I could do there, but I knew that I wasn't able to move up into a spot that I really wanted to. And by doing what I'm doing now, and also working for that other company, I would still be in public safety, and I would still be helping out dispatchers, whether it be on the technology side or the mental health aspect of it, by sharing stories, being able to get them out there. And so that was one of the biggest things for me when doing this, but it did suck. Like I really didn't want to leave. I loved what I was doing, but I felt like there was more that I could do on this end of it, and it has definitely helped. Now, with you, do you ever find, or when you look back on your career and everything, do you feel like maybe some of the stuff in your past, either from your upbringing or other things that have happened in your lifetime, that also helped you in your job, whether it have been, the EMT, fire medic, or straight a firefighter, some of those experiences that helped in what it was that you were doing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it made all the difference. Like I was saying earlier, it's like I grew up in chaos, and so I was very comfortable around chaos, and it didn't throw me. It's like I knew I could navigate it, and I was used to it. And when you're a little kid and your mom is drunk, and all these weird people are in your house, and whatever's going on, you have to be self-sufficient, and you have to navigate through that. And that gives you the skills to navigate through all the calls and all the people's houses we walk into. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that you grow up in a mess, and so you're really able to function and work within a mess. I don't know if that's a simple way of saying it, but it absolutely did. I think it's what made me good at my job. It's exactly that.
Yeah, I asked that too, because there's a lot of people that I've spoken to where they've taken a certain call, and something that had happened to them in their past kind of prepared them for what was going on the phone with that specific call. And it's just, and for myself as well, firm believer that type of experience helps us in dealing with certain incidents that maybe another person wouldn't be able to deal with the same way, because they don't have that same experience. So they might not have, for lack of a better way to put it, a tip or a trick or something to help someone during their time of need. So that's why I asked that, because there's...
Yeah. No, it's a good question. Yeah, absolutely. That retreat that I go to, one of the clinicians tells a great story. He was a police officer in San Rafael for a bazillion years, and his daughter, she was in, I think, her late 20s, and was very high up in Google, and worked, just incredibly smart and capable. And she calls him one day and says, she's just sobbing. She's all, I've been in an accident. And he's like, where are you? And he goes rushing over there. He goes, I expected to see, fire engines and ambulances and this big scene, and there's a car pulled over, and she's hugging some lady I've never seen before. And he goes and he's like, what happened? What is wrong? And she goes, I hit a squirrel. Can you do something? And he said, at that moment, I realized that she would not make a terrible first responder. And she had an incredible childhood. She grew up, not seeing crap, and not being, seeing people treat each other poorly, or things happen, or, everything is just always very safe and comfortable. And I think when you you grow up in that stuff, not safe and not comfortable and all that. And you're used to functioning in that. And I don't know if I'm just repeating myself, but yeah, I think that's just I'm not saying all people who had good childhoods are bad at it, but
Right.
you know what I mean? That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that, I think that's one reason that, that we are good at it.
I think it also helps in a way in some sort of chaos like that, when not so much that we're desensitized, but we're able to handle a lot more of that stuff as it comes in. And those who might not have had that same experience or anything, they end up taking a call that has that type of chaos, and hopefully they end up talking to somebody about it. But that's also why we're there as well, to ask each other, are you okay? Is everything all right? And when they say, yeah, sure, you ask again, because a lot of times, and I was the same way, man. I was one of the dispatchers who would bury my calls, and I never talked about them at first, and that was not cool. It was, and I say that because I learned the hard way, that wasn't good. I was thinking that I was leaving it at home, but my silence at home, or disconnection or whatever, was really what was telling that there was actually something going on. But I had all these calls that were in me that I wasn't letting go. So it goes both ways for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's like it's our greatest strength and it's our biggest weakness, in terms of we're so good at, we compartmentalize everything. And I liken it to, like, I have a box, and I go on a shitty call and I put it in the box and I close the lid, and then I go on to the next one, and then the next one, and then one day that box is full and I can't close the lid, and then everything just becomes, I think, like, that's when I got PTSD, is I couldn't close that lid anymore. And I've been on some pretty horrible calls, and I've had people say, hey, are you okay? And it's like, oh yeah, I'm good, because you don't ever want to say, like, oh no, that call upset me, because maybe it didn't upset the other guys on the call, and so you're gonna be like, well, what the hell's wrong with me? And there's no way I'm going to talk about it. But you'd be amazed at how many other people, those calls that affect. And ever since I kind of came out and started talking about my PTSD, and went back to my department and talked to all the shifts about my experience and what I went through, and because for the longest time I thought I was the only one in the department who was going through this, and who was weak and couldn't handle my job. And once I started talking about it, I get phone calls. Hey, can we go get lunch? Hey, can we grab a beer? People wanting to talk about feeling shitty about calls. And it's like we're all dying to talk, but so many of us are afraid of getting labeled. And it's just, it's so important.
Yeah, it's that almost screaming in silence, right? You've got stuff that's going on, but nobody knows, and then you finally start talking about it. And I think that's one of the best things about, one, from what we're doing here, what you do as well. And, a lot of people who are finally starting to talk about certain things, we're trying to smash this stigma, as they say, where, a lot of times, and I was one of those as well. Like, I didn't want to be the weak person. I didn't want, to hear someone say, oh, well, he just can't hack it. No, it's not. I just, I've got shit going on, but, I wasn't telling anyone about it. It was therapeutic for me to finally start writing it down, and the job that was kind of killing me, in the sense of just being burnt out and everything else, was the same one that saved me, because I started, when I went back to school, I was still dispatching, but I was doing all these different projects, all based off of dispatch and other disciplines of public safety, but it was all sharing stories. And that's when it all started becoming a therapeutic process, writing all of this stuff down, putting it out there, people reading it, and then realizing they're not alone, doing the podcast, having others share their stories. And it's not always the same for everyone sharing a story. It's not always therapeutic, but they do always mention, I kind of feel better after talking about that. And that's what it's all about. And so I'm glad that people are finally really starting to talk about these things that are going on with them.
Yeah, exactly. When I have a guest on and, they tell their story, I always get feedback afterwards that says, that was like, I never realized how good it would feel to finally tell my story, or, that's the first time I really got to tell my story. And as important it is for other people to hear their story, and so they realize that they're not alone, telling their story is really powerful too. And so, yeah, I think it's so great. I know when I found your podcast, I was super excited, and just trying to get as much out there that we can, that, you're not alone, and there's so many people that are suffering, but there's so much help out there too. Mm-hmm. And you just gotta break that stigma.
And there is a lot more resources, right? Like,
my God,
like years ago, nobody in my dispatch center knew, that they would say a couple things here and there. Like, there's a couple, these 911 organizations, but like even them, they didn't have a lot of resources out there. We would hear about different trainings that were going on, but it really wasn't coming up. It was more so the part about excuse me, about how to handle an active shooter, call, or a suicidal call, or all these different types of incident types that you would possibly deal with. Not one really. One. There was one that I remember, and they're still going on now. But other than that one, there wasn't anything else about mental health and wellness or anything like that, or someone telling me that I could sit on my ass and do yoga positions and I wouldn't be straining my neck or anything while I'm sitting there for 12 fucking hours taking phone calls, That wasn't out there.
Totally. And for the fire service, it's been all about physically fit, taking care of your body. And I mean, that's even, come a long way since, the Salty Boys and, the crappy food they ate and they smoked and nobody ever exercised. And so that was kind of like the first wave was taking care of yourself physically. And yeah, my department had nothing, had absolutely nothing. And never talked about it, never mentioned it. We had wellness, committees, but it was all about physical fitness and, keeping your weight down and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I went off with PTSD, and then another guy went off. And when that happened, our union, actually, they took the bull by the horns and they put together a peer counseling group and did an incredible job. And, so it's better, but you got to keep getting the word out. People just got to keep, like you say, getting the resources out so people know that they're there.
Mm-hmm. Now, was there, and you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but
I'm an open book. I'll talk about anything.
So when you retired, you talk about getting PTSD and everything. What was it? A certain call? Was there an incident? I guess something else that happened. What was it that really put you into that early retirement position?
What happened was I had a fatal fire in September 2013, and I first engine and trucks and stuff, they first went in and they knocked the fire down already, and they did a primary search and gave it an all clear, and so I was told to go, will you go in there and find and see if this guy's still in there? Everybody's saying he is, but I don't think there's anybody in there. So I was like, all right. So me and my crew went up there, and the fire was it was really bizarre the way it burned. It was kind of like mind blowing, like, wait, how did this happen? And so, try to make a long story short, I didn't find him. A crew that came in after us with, they were doing, they're doing overhaul. They're pulling ceiling in the kitchen, and the kitchen is totally clean. There's no fire in there at all. Anyways, they found this guy, and he was underneath the dining room table up against the wall. And so I feel like I completely fit. It was a call, the straw that broke the camel's back. It like filled my box, and I didn't realize it at the time. I felt like I screwed up horribly, but my wife says that I just never stopped talking about that fire. And then the May after that is when I started noticing symptoms, like the tones would go off, and I'd had the same physiological response to a leaking hydrant than I would to, a bus of, 6-year-olds just crashed into, something and it's on fire, the same exact physiological response, no matter what it was, and then the images started where I just calls from 25 years ago would start rolling in my head, stuff I hadn't thought about in years. And, it was like a videotape and I couldn't turn it off. And then the anxiety and then the nightmare started. And I knew something, and I was even a bigger asshole at work than I normally am. People started to say something and, all the guys were leaving my station and I'm like, what the fuck? I take care of these guys. And they're like, yeah, but we're tired of getting yelled at. And I was like, oh, okay. I need to look at this. So anyway, so I went and saw a therapist and she's like, yeah, you have, PTSD. And, at first I was like, no, I don't. That can't happen to me. There's no way. And then finally like, okay, I do have it, but let's fix it. I just wanted to fix it. Like, let's fix this so I can go back to work and not have this feeling anymore. And I found out you can't fix it. It's not something that you just fix. So I kept trying to work and things just kept getting worse and worse and worse until, one morning I got off work and I was heading home and it just all came tumbling down on me and I was going to kill myself. And that's when I realized that I got to do something for real. Mm-hmm. And that's when I never went back to work. And then, I seen a therapist and psychiatrist and, to that retreat that I talk about a lot. And then it just took a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And I was still kind of saying, yeah, I might go back to work. But I knew I wasn't. And, and I said something to my wife about going back to work. And she's like, you can go back to work, but I'm not going to stick around and go through that again, for just because you want to go back and have your fun or what, whatever. It's like, she's like, I'm not going to go through that again. Cause it was hell on her, too, when I was really in the thick of it. And so, so then, it was a matter. I don't think I ever said like, yes, I will retire. It just kind of all, like went that way. And so I ended up retiring and, it took me a good couple of years to kind of accept it and get over it. It was hard.
It is really hard, right? When it turns out that, you need to look in the mirror. That we all have that moment when, because we don't ever want to admit that it's us. We're our own worst enemy at the time.
Totally.
And you got to jump over that hurdle and once you, I think it is that moment though, that once you realize, fuck, okay, it is me, I've got this issue that I really need to deal with, that then things start to become a little more clear. You go from that fogginess and also a little bit of denial to the realization.
There's a lot of denial, yeah.
Yes, yeah, and then the realization and then clarity almost when you really start to open up and share more and share more and share more. And I know a lot of people who have done the same, where they finally went to go talk to someone and they've tried out like EMDR, that and a few other things, but mostly that one is the one that I've heard about more. And they just feel better. There's that, that stress is, that weight is lifted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it's like, I can honestly look back and say that, like PTSD was the best thing that ever happened to me. It made me deal with so much stuff. And, I wasn't like this tight little ball, like just going to calls and just pounding myself into the ground, to kind of get away from whatever else is going on in the back of my head. And it made me slow down. And it's like, now I enjoy life and now I'm happy and I don't need to prove myself. And, the whole thing about being vulnerable is it's incredible to finally get to that place where you can be vulnerable and, not be super awesome, all the time. And, the fire department can be a tough place. We put on great shows for, funerals and being family and all that kind of stuff. But, I've had cops say that, the fire department eats their young. It can be a pretty tough place. But, so it's just, I'm so much freer and lighter. And, it's like I said before, it took a long time. And, the key that really made it work for me was that I had a culturally competent therapist. She had used to be a cop. She knew, she knew the deal. She knew what I was going through. Yeah. And, understood, PTSD and the life of a first responder. and then going to that retreat and being with telling my stories to peers who've been there before. And, it's like a therapist is supposed to understand and supposed to say, it's okay. You did the best you could. You're only human, all that kind of nice stuff. But to have your peers say that to you just means all the difference in the world. And so sharing your stories with peers just made an incredible difference. It really did.
Yeah, and it's so true because they're the ones who know exactly what it is like when you're going through it. There was one incident that I can remember specifically where myself and two other coworkers had gone in to speak to a therapist, and I'm sure the person was amazing at what they do. However, they didn't come from public safety, any part of public safety, and when the person asks us what happened, and we tell them. And they say, well, how does that make you feel? I remember this gentleman saying that, and I just sat there and I looked over my coworkers and we just kind of sat there for a moment. And I don't remember who said it, but someone was like, yeah, I don't know that this is going to work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I just did a podcast with Ellen Kirschman, and she's a psychologist, and she's been working with first responders forever, and she wrote a book called I Love a Cop and I Love a Firefighter, and we talked a lot about the culturally competent therapist and the differences between the two. And it's really, you just hit the nail on the head. It's like, you can't just sit there and ask us questions, and you have to understand. Or my other favorite one is like, so tell me about this videotape that plays in your head. And so, will tell me the calls. And I think I got to I just started the third call. I don't know, there were probably 12 that played in my head. And I got to the third call and she's like, oh my God, you have to stop. I'm going to get PTSD. I can't hear that. It's like, okay, yeah, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another incident that happened where we had a guy come in, and we're still good friends to this day. Well, we had a sergeant who passed away just all of a sudden, something happened, and he wasn't on duty or anything, but he was in the hospital, and just within a few hours, he passed away. And the following day, my crew and I are working. We had come in, and a couple of us, me included, I didn't even know that it had happened. I was expecting to see him that morning for coffee. And one of the supervisors said, the admin didn't call you? And I said, no. What were they supposed to call me about? And then they told me. So there was a guy who came in who was from a critical incident stress management team in the county north of us, and he was also from dispatch. And he walked in. We knew he was coming, and he walked in and just kind of walked around, just kind of observed us, said hello, and just basically said, there's nothing that I can say really that's going to help you guys right now because of the situation. I see that you all are working really hard at the moment, and that's like the best thing that you need right now. That was way better than what the other person was. And I can't even explain it. Maybe it was just the fact that person was coming from dispatch as well. We knew that he was from dispatch, but the fact that he didn't come in and start asking us a bunch of questions like, how do you feel? How does this make you, do you think you can do this anymore? Or anything like that, just observed and let us do our thing, and then kind of talk to us a little bit afterwards. That alone was gold. Yeah.
Somebody who gets it,
Now, for you, when this happened and everything, you said you volunteer for this retreat. Tell me about this retreat. What is it that you do there, and what goes on? We kind of talked about it a little bit here with kind of sharing stories and such. But what else do you do for this retreat as a volunteer?
So this retreat, it's called the West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat. It's 6 days. And you stay there. They have 2 clinicians, chaplain, usually like 12 to 14 peers. And they say it's like 6 months of therapy in 6 days. And so they'll have 6 clients that will come up, and they'll just go through this incredible, the transformation is unbelievable. It's like they walk in like looking scared shitless. They look bad, they're tired, their hats are down really low. They're just all kind of hunched over and hiding. And then by the time they leave Friday, they're open and they're talking and they're laughing. And so really what goes on there is a lot of sharing. I think it's Brene Brown that says you're only as sick as your secrets. And so it's really a place to dump your secrets, with your peers, and you find out that you're not alone. And then they do a lot of education, like, what is PTSD? Who gets PTSD? Like they talk about exhaustion syndrome and resiliency and, just the whole rescuer personality and how the job tends to choose us and not us choose a job. And so you just really learn about, exactly what it is you've been doing and what you've been doing to your body. Everybody, police, fire, dispatch, EMS, just everybody, physiologically what's happened. And then we learn that PTSD is a physiological injury. And that's, there's a big push to change it to post-traumatic stress injury, because it's an actual injury to your brain. It's very similar to like getting hit in the head with a baseball bat. Mm-hmm. Your brain changes shape. It changes the chemicals that it produces. It, your amygdala basically, which is your warning system, basically like turns on to 11 and all the way up, and it just doesn't ever shut off. And so, when you learn that, it's like, oh, it's not just me. I'm not a sissy. I have a brain injury. And it just makes you so much more open, to healing and getting better. And then they give you a lot of tools to use. And, when I first heard about, people saying, oh, learn how to breathe right. And I'm like, yeah, breathing is not going to make this shit go away. And, right. But then you get through there and you meet other people who are on different, spots of their journey and their healing process. And it just gives you, man, the place gives you hope. And it's like the first time in your life too, that somebody fully takes care of you. It's pretty amazing. Like something simple as like when you're up there, the clients don't bust their own tables. The peers will come and pick up their plates and take care of everything for them. And it's funny because that's one of the hardest things for first responders to do in every single retreat. And I've been to a bazillion of them, and every single retreat, here, I'm going to take your plate. And they're like, no, you're not. You know what I mean? We can't even let somebody do that for us. Something as simple as clearing your plate away. And so it just really puts you on the other side and teaches you what it's like to let somebody take care of you and, accept help and give you hope. Yeah. It's a magical place. It really is. And all the clinicians, are unbelievably culturally competent. A lot of them have been cops or firefighters or dispatchers. And so they really know.
I think that's one of the biggest thing where it's almost that acknowledgement or confirmation that there is something wrong. It's not just you thinking, or that you're going crazy or whatever. There's something wrong, and once you get that confirmation, like you said, people come in, and in the beginning they're just kind of closed off, but then you kind of find out that all this other stuff is going on, and slowly throughout that time you end up opening up, almost like the caterpillar and butterfly and everything. And
yeah, exactly.
And just really coming out, and sharing more and more information. And that's a great thing. How many years have you been doing this now?
I went through as a client in January of 2015. So I try and get back there like 3 or 4 times a year. Mm-hmm. They, they started off pretty small, and it's still a real kind of grassroots, small. They're growing a lot, but they're really trying to stay controlled so that none of the program gets kind of diluted, because it is so special. I can't remember how many retreats they have. Before, it's like they'd have one once a month, and now they're having 2 or 3 a month. And then they also have a retreat called SOS. It's for spouses and significant others. And so it's a very similar retreat. for obviously spouses and significant others of, first responders, to help give them the support that they need. And so, yeah, I can't even remember. And they have satellite spots. They've opened one in Oregon, and they've one in Washington, Kansas City, and I can't remember a couple other places. But like the waiting list, the sad part is the waiting list is like a year long. It's just the need is, I know it really sucks because, us, we don't call until we're at the very bottom, and, we needed to go like a year ago, and then you find out that the waiting list is so long. It's tough, but.
Yeah, and that is one of those things. Going back a little bit to what you were saying earlier, that, well, one, we're and especially in dispatch as well, but really all of us, we're all great at communications in a sense, but when we communicate with each other, it's like it's not there.
Yeah,
whether it be with our coworkers or sometimes family members on some of those things, but going to a retreat like this and being able to share different stories, different things that you've been dealing with, to be able to do that in a room with people that understand is really powerful. There's a session that I do at conferences called Imagine Listening, and I have I mentioned this in the beginning of the episode. I have dispatchers come in and they share their personal I Am 911 stories. Now, not all of them are like the gut-wrenching ones. Some of them are saves, but the majority of them are those emotionally intense calls. And but that's only for 30 minutes, and then the last 30 minutes is when we go to the humor side, and we share the funny stories and everything, because I don't want anyone leaving there all down. So we have a nice laugh at the end. But a lot of people have said just from being in that room and sharing these stories, they feel a lot better. And they do have that sense that they're not alone, that there are other people who are going through the same thing. And so for you with this, with the retreat and everything that you've been doing now and your own recovery, was this your inspiration to start the Firefighter Deconstructed podcast?
Well, sort of, a little bit. I wrote a book. So I wrote a memoir about my, experience going through all this. And one thing that publishers want you to do is like already be famous before they'll take your book. And so, I was working on my author platform, and I had a friend who he is a former police officer from down south, and he got into a whole mess of trouble and got PTSD and lost everything and crawled his way back. And so now he works with first responders, and he has a podcast. And so he kept bugging me to be on his podcast. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not me. I'm terrible. And so anyway, so I finally said, okay. And I was on his podcast, and it went pretty well. And then I was thinking, well, I could be on people's podcasts to get my name out there. And so I was on a couple other podcasts. And then I was on the podcast of this one woman who has a network called the Mental Health News Radio Network. And I was on her show. And then when we were done, she said, hey, will you do a podcast for our network? And I first said, like, no, that's like, I can't, that's not me. I'm not qualified to do that. I'm horribly inarticulate. And then I was like, oh, people have been saying you should do a podcast, this just fell in your lap. And so I was like, yeah, what the hell? I'll give it a go. And, so I started doing it, and I enjoy it. And then the letters and notes and stuff that I get saying like, you changed my life, and I've been struggling alone for so long, and now I'm going to go get help. It's like, that's worth that's just so worth it, all the time and the expense and everything. And so yeah, it's really cool. Did
you ever think it was going to be like this? You're on what episode are you on now?
Like 58, I think.
Okay, so 58. So just reflecting on these last 58 episodes, and between that, the retreat, your recovery, your everything that you've done in your career, now, your experience in life and the creation of this podcast, and you're helping others, come on and you talk to them and everything. Did you think it was going to be like this?
No, I didn't think it would. It was like that whole thing, like we kind of talked about in the beginning. It's like, is anybody even listening? Am I just talking to myself, or my dog
Right.
looking at me like, oh, would you shut up? And so yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of expectation. I just kind of like, oh, this will be fun. I'll try this. And, I thought my friends would listen to a couple episodes, and that would be it. And I have a handful of people who, are like faithful listeners. And then I get, like I said, that email from, somebody saying like, you changed my life. And it's, I never, especially like out of the blue, somebody like, I just happened to find your podcast, and, it's made all the difference in our lives. And, I try to cover everybody. I've had 2 kids of police officers that were, went through PTSD when they're younger, on, and, I have spouses on, and, I try to get everybody involved, on, because so many people are affected by it. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's really neat. It's really neat.
There's a lot of different aspects of public safety, and especially when it comes to family and friends, and how it is on their side. And it was something that I really I didn't think about a lot. I'm going through all of this, but didn't really. I mean, of course, the thought was there, but I never went past deeper into that. I ended up doing an episode with my wife a few years ago where she was just kind of telling her side of what it was like when I was in dispatch, and listening, I thought, fuck, for real? Like, that's what it was like for you? Like, here I'm thinking, I'm going through, it was going through some shit, but I didn't think about, and that's what I mean by, learning the hard way, as I was switching my mindset around on a lot of different things that was going on. And my son was sitting there as well, and he wasn't in the camera, but you could hear him. And he's like, yeah, I mean, you weren't here for a lot of stuff. I know that you were there and you were helping others, but we didn't have you here. And so that is like just like a stab me in the heart.
Oh, I can imagine.
But very understandable. Like I understood where they were coming from.
Right.
So that was eye-opening to hear from that side. But it's good that on your show you are bringing in other points of view, other aspects of public safety. And no matter what discipline it is, to find out that other side as well, because that's how we're going to get through this whole journey, right? Is from learning from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah, my wife used to say to me, like if we talk on the phone the night before I was about to get off, I go, so, like, what do you want to do tomorrow? And she would always say, well, it depends on what walks through the front door. And I always thought she meant depends on how much sleep you get. And it was like, no. It just depended on, you know what I mean? Did I come home frustrated? Did I come home happy? Did I come home, exhausted? Did I come, it just all, did I just come home and have a shitty call and not want to talk about anything? And so yeah, our families just go through so much. Yeah, my wife says if I get to 100 episodes, she'll come on. So I'm a little nervous, but
perfect. That'll be episode 100. That'll be epic.
Exactly. So yeah, and it's just it's great. It's so great what you're doing, and yeah, everybody that's out there kind of pounding the concrete to try and save some lives, because the suicide rate it's almost like that's one thing that will keep me doing this, even like when I don't want to do it, is like, I see another suicide and it just kills me. I just can't. It's just so awful. The suicide is so awful. And the numbers are just staggering. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, they tend to continue to go up at times. But I think also, on the other side of that, like we were saying already earlier, there's a lot more resources. There's a lot more people who are talking about a lot of this. And that, that part of looking weak is, it's it's probably going to be there for a little bit, but it is going away. People are realizing that
I agree. It's getting better. Yeah.
It's more in having courage, to be able to actually reach out and get some help versus, the weakness part of it. For me, finally, it got to the point where I didn't give a shit anymore. Like I didn't care what people thought. It was helping me. What I was doing was working. And, if it helped me, maybe others would see it as well and think, you know what? I think I'm going to try the same thing. And if it's just one person that I can convince, shit, I've done my due diligence. I've done my duty.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the stigma is starting to go away in terms of people. Like, it's okay if you have it or you have it, and I won't judge you and I'll be there for you. But it's I think we're still struggling with if I have it. I was talking to one of the guys who's on our peer support team, and I go, hey, I hadn't seen him in a while. Like, how's it going? And blah, blah, blah. And I go, how's the, peer support team going? And he goes, it's good. He says, it's getting really hard. He says, because I have all my stuff and then I'm hearing everybody else's stuff. And so it's a lot. And I go, well, who are you talking to? And he's like, nobody. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like it's just been bumped up to the next level. Like, okay, well, I'm the peer support guy. I'm supposed to take care of everybody. And so I'm not supposed to need help because I'm the caretaker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like we just keep pushing it up. So we need to get to that point where it's okay for me to have it. And, like you said, and be able to ask for help. Because it does help, so much help out there. And man, does it make a difference. Let's
normalize it. Normalize it for sure. So as we go into the wrap up of this episode, this has been excellent to have you on and learn so much more about you and, this retreat, as well as, your inspiration for your podcast and all. For those who are listening and watching right now, when you think about therapy and such, how important is it, to make that decision, or if people want to actually reach out for help, go seek therapy, and then of course a therapist that is from public safety, or I guess it's different for either one, but just I guess really just advice on seeking therapy. How important is it to get some sort of therapy, or to at least just talk to somebody?
I think it's paramount to getting better and to healing. There's so much that you learn, and for me, like, I'd get stuck on these things all the time. Like, I should be better, I should be stronger. And the therapist would be like, well, kept saying, I'd be like, why is this happening to me? And she's like, well, tell me about some of the calls you've been on. And she said, any other person could see half of that, and they'd become a wet noodle. You know what I mean? They'd be ruined. And you've been seeing this like every other day for 25 years. Like, what did you think was going to happen? You know what I mean? So it's like, they're really good at redirecting things and, let's look at this from a different angle. And it's a really good way for you to get out of your own head. And then also the education too, they're going to teach you, any therapist, well, this is why, you're acting, hypervigilant because, your amygdala won't shut off. And it's so important. And it's so important to go to, like I said, a culturally competent therapist. They don't have to have been a first responder, but I would really find one that works with first responders. And a lot of them that do, that's pretty much all that they'll work with, or see is first responders. And it sucks because sometimes you'll have to go to 2 or 3 different therapists that, to find one that you really click with. So many people say, I went to therapy once and it didn't work. I was like, well, it doesn't work like that. PTSD. I remember I always said, okay, when's this gonna be over? When am I gonna be better? And it's like, it took years. It took, what are we in 2021? I'd say it really took 5 years for me to really come out the other side. And, but you will. But yeah, getting help it's impossible to do this alone. It's absolutely impossible. Because your brain takes you places that you don't want to go, or you didn't even think you can go. And like, it takes over your mind, it takes over stuff. So yeah, you have to get help.
Patience is a big thing then.
Patience is a big thing. I used to write, this will not last forever, like all over everything, just to remind myself, like, this will not last forever. And it's true. It really is.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so very much for being on. And for those who are watching and listening right now, how can people find out more about you, about the show, the retreat, just anything?
Well, I have a website. It's just firefighterdeconstructed.com. And on there I have, all my podcasts, and then I have resources, like places to call, like the WCPR, that retreat, all kinds of other places to get help. There's a lot of places or, organizations starting up to help first responders. If anything, just help you find help, like make those phone calls for you and say, okay, this is what you got to do. So there's a lot of resources on there. I have a lot of books on there that, help a lot. I've read a lot that helped a lot. So there's some good stuff on there. And then, my podcast, the Firefighter Deconstructed.com, is pretty much on every platform that has podcasts. And I try to get one out once a week. All that construction kind of threw me off, and so I'll be getting back to that. But I pretty much try to make one land every Thursday morning. And if you want to be in my show, please just hit me up. You can on my website. You can find me there and drop me a line. I'd love to have some more dispatchers on. I think they've been the forgotten entity in all this, and it's getting better. It definitely is, but I think you guys need a lot more, not more credit, but a lot more involvement, and you need to be part of the conversation a lot more.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it is definitely changing, and changing for the better. So that is excellent. Thank you again so very much for being on.
Oh, thank you for having me. Sorry about all that, whatever it was, all that alien interference.
Yeah, it is all good. I will be right back here with you in just a second. For those who are watching right now, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches Podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy. Shout out again to patrons, and you can check us out for bonus content on patreon.com/WTT podcast. If you are heading to Navigator next week, don't forget I will be there at booth 412. And this can be seen on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.